Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Dava Kunja Bihari. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanandi. Aha. Ja, čakaj, da se malo obrne. Ja, lekcija bo potekala v angleščini zaradi bhakti in gostov. Lecture will be delivered in English as there are devotees assembled who do not speak Croatian or Slovene. Ja, lahko. Ste to rada gopina? Ne. O, si radha? Goloka Bihari. Wow. Ja, Krišna je podoben kot na gopinata v Radadešu, ampak Radarani ni. Ja, so nižje eno stopnico. Aha. Mi lahko en da mojo torbo tam, bo rabimo čale, ta rumena z džapo, rjava džapa, vrečka. Aha. After years of reading it caught up. We are reading. Okay, hvala. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, titled Liberation, chapter 21, titled The Dynasty of Bharata, text 18. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Čaturaksha ali Yantraksha. Tat prasanganubhavena ranti devanuvartina Ranti devanuvartina abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana Tat prasanganubhavena ranti devanuvartina abhavan yogina sarve Narayana Parayana Tat Prasanganubhavena Ranti Devanuvartina Abhavan Yogina Sarve Narayana Parayana Tat Prasanganubhavena Ranti Devanuvartina Abhavan Yogina Sarve Narayana Parayana Prabhui Devanuvartina Abhavan Yogina Sarve Narayana Parayana. Matajis Tat Prasanganubhavena Ranti Devanuvartina Abhavan Yogina Sarve Narayana Parayana Tat Prasanganubhavena Ranti Devanuvartina Abhavan Yogina Sarve Narayana Parayana. Tat prasanga anubhavena. Because of associating with King Rantideva, when talking with him about bhakti-yoga. Rantideva anuvartina, the followers of King Rantideva, that is, his servants, his family members, his friends and others. Abhavan became, yogina, first-class mystic yogis or bhakti yogis. Sarve, all of them. Narayana Parayana, devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All those who followed the principles of King Rantideva were totally favored by his mercy and became pure devotees attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. Thus, they all became the best of yogis. Purport. The best yogis or mystics are the devotees as confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita 647. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatinantaratmana shradhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamu mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. The best yogi is he who constantly thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of the heart. Because Rantidev was the king, the chief executive in the state, all the residents of the state became devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, by the king's transcendental association. This is the influence of a pure devotee. If there is one pure devotee, his association can create hundreds and thousands of pure devotees. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnava is meritorious in proportion to the number of devotees he has created. A Vaishnava becomes superior not simply by jugglery of words, but by the number of devotees he has created for the Lord. Here the Lord, Rantidevanuvartinaha, indicates that Rantideva's officers, friends, relatives and subjects all became first-class Vaishnavas by his association. In other words, Rantideva is confirmed herein to be a first-class devotee or Mahabhagavata. Mahat Sevam Dvaram Ahur Vimukte. One should render service to such Mahatmas, for then one will automatically achieve the goal of liberation. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has also said, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nistar Payeche Keva. One cannot be liberated by his own effort, but if one becomes subordinate to a pure Vaishnava, the door to liberation is open. Verse and translation one more time. Tat prasanganubhavena rantidevanuvartinah abhavan yogina sarve narayana parayana. All those who followed the principles of King Rantideva were totally favored by his mercy and became pure devotees attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus, they all became the best of yogis. Namam Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Paschatya Desha Tarine, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So because King Rantidev was a pure devotee, his citizens followed his example and they all became devotees. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, what's that verse? Yad yad acharati shreshthas. Whatever a great man does, common men follow. So they followed him and maybe even imitated, and they became devotees. But they all became first-class devotees. And we cannot help but not to notice that this verse totally reminds us of Srila Prabhupada, because he came to the West and then just a wave of Krishna consciousness swept across the world, because the people started following in his footsteps and they all became devotees. Now, the first point that Srila Prabhupada starts the purport with is the quote from the 6th chapter, from the very end. This is the last verse from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the previous verse, Krishna says that yogi is the higher than us. Tapasvibhyo diko yogi, jnanibhyash pimatodhika, karmibhyash chadiko yogi, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Yogi is higher than tapasvi, than the ascetic. Jnanibhyash chadik, higher than the empiricist, and higher than the fruity worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. So Krishna defines yogi to be higher than the materialist, speculative, impersonal spiritualist, and an ascetic. And then he defines who's the highest of all the yogis, the one who always thinks of Krishna and serves him, worships him and serves him with love. So that's a devotee, the higher of all the yogis, because devotee has reached the conclusions of yoga. In yoga as a system, one of the Shat Darshanas, or one of the 6 principal philosophies from the Vedas, the ultimate goal of yoga is samadhi and the realization of the Paramatma in the heart. And devotees surpass that by having darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of his deity and in the form of his holy name. That's why all the benefits of yoga are achieved simply by coming to kirtan and having darshan of the deities. What to speak of having both. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Srila Prabhupada quotes in the purport, that one can recognize a great devotee by how many devotees he can make. Now, one can recognize the opposite too, because there are people who claim, well, this point is preaching. Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and the point is preaching. Making devotees means preaching. There are people who believe that doing one's personal bhajan, chanting the holy name in a holy place is higher than preaching. But this is simply not true. Bhaktivinoda Thakur confirms this. And when you go to those people chanting, let's say on Radha Kunda or some other places, they immediately start preaching to you. So why don't you first follow your own philosophy? Why don't you walk your talk? If bhajan is higher than preaching, then you just sit there and chant and ignore the rest of the world. So don't start preaching, because that's lower level according to you. Also in the fourth canto, Dhruva Maharaj, when he finally gets the darshan of Lord Vishnu, he says, now that I've got your darshan, I just cannot stop speaking about you and glorifying you. And that's the real devotee. He cannot stop speaking about Krishna, which means sharing with others, not just sitting and imitating an exalted devotee and chanting in a secluded place and hoping that someone would come so I can preach to them. No, live the holy. Srila Prabhupada could have lived for another 10 years had he stayed in Vrindavan. He could have lived up to 90 years of age, but he sacrificed his health. Srila Prabhupada had diabetes by the end of his life, which is diabetes you can get by sleeping less than you need. And Srila Prabhupada slept hardly 4 hours per night. He would take an afternoon nap and sleep several hours per night. At any time zone he would visit, no matter the jet lag, he would just put his watch to the time in the local zone and continue with his daily routine. So that's a great devotee, the one who preaches, the one who shares Krishna consciousness, not the one who just keeps it for himself as like, oh, it's okay, I'm satisfied with my spiritual life, but that will never satisfy anyone. We need quality sadhana, quality spiritual practice, quality chanting, quality reading, but that is for us and not for Krishna's satisfaction by engaging others. So the product of studying and having proper spiritual practice is that we want to share it with others. We feel the joy and we want to share it with others. So that's the point of this verse. Preaching. The highest devotees are those who preach. And even if they don't have deep personal realization of Krishna, still sharing a little bit of Krishna that we have with others helps them and helps us. We get the blessings, they get the blessings, and we both advance together. That's what Srila Prabhupada said. That's why I'm initiating disciples for expanding the pleasure. And that's why Krishna expands, first as, Balaram, Radharani, for expanding the pleasures. And that's why Lord Chaitanya expands into 5 features for expanding the pleasure, so everyone can enjoy. And that's why we're preaching, so people can be devotees and enjoy real life, not the fake materialistic life. You know, for the past few years, since I've left the temple life after, 20 years, and I spend more time with people who are not devotees, they may have fun, but they're not happy. They're not happy. They don't have the goal of life. You know, the moment someone mentions death, everybody is like, you know, it's like, it's like, oh, you know, death, you know, you die, you get born again. Don't speak like death. Like that, not like death. Don't speak like that. It's like, and I'm like, you know, the only thing I fear about dying is that I won't be able to finish writing all the books I had in mind. But I'm thinking, Krishna, you know, I'm compiling materials, you know, writing manuscripts. So if I die, can you just pass that on to someone who can finish it and publish for the pleasure of the devotees? But other than that, it's like, besides, you know, slow, painful death and invalidity, is like, you know, yesterday I was coming by train. Train was driving 120 kilometers per hour, and you know, these 2 thin pieces of metal on each side that it run the rails. And I was thinking, you know, what if it just jumps off the rails? Something happens, you know, a little bit of an earthquake, they bend, and boom, you're gone. You know, it can happen, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, it happened just outside my hometown. They just started driving these fast trains, you know, that, you know, how to say that, bend sideways when you come to a curve. And it was going downhill, and people were sprinkling, some workers were sprinkling some chemicals around the rails so the plants don't grow. And it was, you know, their boss purchased the cheaper ones so he can leave some money for himself, but these chemicals that they sprinkled are slippery. And the train started going too fast down the slope. And the driver realized it's going too fast. He hit the brakes, but it just kept gliding down the hill. It jumped off the rails. You know, I don't know how many dozens of people were injured, and a number of people died. You know, comfortable train ride, you know, and you're gone. You know, what can you do? You can hold on to something, you know, this thing above your head where you put the luggage, and then luggage is flying through the compartment. People are flying, but you're gone. There's nothing you can do. Gone. And I was just thinking, it's like, you know, what if it happens and you're gone? Well, you're gone. You know, whatever. I continue serving wherever else, you know, maybe, hopefully, in some family of devotees. But people out there, they're not happy. Death is something unknown to them. They don't know about the eternality of the soul. They may something theoretically, vaguely, but they're afraid, and therefore they need transcendental knowledge. That's why the entire December devotees were going out pushing it, you know, giving it an extra effort to reach people and to give them books. Last summer I met devotees from Atlanta, Georgia in the USA. They are well known now for their book distribution. They have the world record holder in book distribution in one day, Mahotsaha Prabhu. The world record was unbeaten in 30 years. A devotee from Switzerland, Harinamananda Prabhu, distributed more than 900 books in one day. And that's, you know, 2 persons in the street, books or sets. Corporate distribution is something else, you know. You come and you meet the CEO of the company and he orders, like, I don't know, 10,000 books for his company. That's something different. But, you know, person to person, books or sets, you know, more than 900 books, and for 30 years it was unbroken until last year. Until last year, 30 years, and this younger devotee, 8 years in Krishna consciousness. Boom! He goes beyond 1,000. And then he goes, couple of days later, he goes 1,500 books. And couple of months later, he goes beyond 3,000. And then his spiritual master visits their temple, and they go outside together, and he's giving him tips. And then next day, he goes 4,000. That's mercy. Okay, in America, where financial situation is, let's say, better than in Slovenia or Croatia, people can afford to give $200 for a set of books in the street. So, if you go to some really poor country, people cannot afford one book, but, what to do. But, even during Srila Prabhupada's time, the record was 1,100 books in one day by 2 devotees. And I've met one of them. Actually, I met both of them. Paramgati Prabhu, former Swami, and Kirti Chandra Prabhu. They were in Rio de Janeiro, and they would enter some underground parking place for the buses coming to the city and leaving the city. They would be outside, taking deep breaths, running inside because place was full of exhaust fumes. And then they would enter the bus, one from front, one from the back, and then they would just start speaking aloud and just put books on people's laps and give like 2 minutes presentation, and then go back through the bus, pick the books or the money from the people, and then go outside, run outside the parking lot and cough black mucus. And they did 1,100 books in one day, and Srila Prabhupada was so pleased, he invited them both by letter to come to Mayapur for Gaur Purnim festival. Kirti Chandra Prabhu unfortunately couldn't go, but Paramgati Prabhu came, and he got, Srila Prabhupada personally gave him silver karatals that he was personally playing. Also, because they were sacrificing. They did sacrifices. There were devotees who even died distributing books. They were, mistreated, abused, even killed for preaching. Throughout the Vaishnava history, especially last 500 years, devotees were getting killed in some places. Not regularly, not often, but things were happening. They gave their lives for preaching. In the 1970s, in Paris, devotees announced that Srila Prabhupada would come in a couple of months. So devotees decided to have a competition. The deal was made that whomever distributes the most books, 2 devotees who distribute the most books within the month before Srila Prabhupada's arrival would be the 2 devotees to bathe Srila Prabhupada's feet when he came. So 2 devotees who back then were known as Bhagavan Prabhu and Indradyumna Prabhu, who later both became sannyasis. They would wake up before Mangalarati and chant, and then full morning program, and then they would leave earlier with some prasadam for the road. And they would go to Paris metro. It was winter time, so sun was rising later, 7:30. They would go to metro and distribute books for 12 hours in the metro and take some little bit of prasadam that they brought with themselves. And then in the evening go back to the temple, take some prasadam dinner, and then go to sleep. For 1 month, they would enter metro before dawn, before sun would rise, and they would come outside of metro when it would be dark. For 1 month, they didn't see sunlight. Can you believe it? Now, it's a scientifically, medically known fact that if you don't get sunlight, enough sunlight, or no sunlight, you become depressive. You develop depression. I don't. Shishi Gauranitai Panchatattva Ki Jai. I think some 100 years ago in Sweden, one winter was so dark that people were so depressive that they drank so much that about 1/3 of population died from freezing, being drunk in snow. And since then, Sweden raised taxes so high. They raised taxes for the alcoholic beverages. They're so expensive in Sweden, believe it or not. Maybe they should do that here too. Not make it cheap and easily available for everyone who wants to get a booze. But Bhagavan Prabhu and Indradyumna Prabhu, they didn't see sunlight for a month and they were ecstatic. Yeah. So that sacrifice for the welfare of other. And that's the, when they say home is where the heart is. So for us devotees, heart is in the streets, distributing mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and that's where our home is. Well, our home is Goloka Vrindavan also, but here in the material world we have no permanent home. We're homeless. Temple is home, but our real home is in the street, distributing books, distributing the holy name, giving Krishna consciousness to people. That's why we call the Hare Krishna movement, because we're moving. It's not, Hare Krishna, it's like a river, not like a lake, not like a small pond, boggy pond. It's like a river flowing constantly. There's no rest. And even Srila Prabhupada said, when you are old, you will not be able to sit in Vrindavan and chant peacefully if you haven't preached enough. So going to Vrindavan, okay, I quit my job, or I saved enough money, or I'm retired and I'm going to Vrindavan and I'm going to chant. No. If you're going to Vrindavan, you're going to preach there too, because that's what 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan did. They wrote books that was also preaching. But in Vrindavan, so many thousands of people come every day, so there's opportunity for preaching at every step. Same applies to any holy place if we want to move there. Preaching, sharing, it doesn't matter little of much or much, but many hands make light work. Which means if everyone does something, all of us together can do a lot. And the time, I'm going to say something controversial. The times of the great acharyas have ended. Srila Prabhupada was the last great acharya. He did indicate that a new acharya may appear later in ISKCON and that he would be self-illumined. But he said that just as a possibility, not as a certainty. But Srila Prabhupada was the last great acharya who did, a huge Herculean task of preaching. Basically, last 3 acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they did huge work in preaching. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur started preaching in 1868, that's when he got Chaitanya Charitamrita. And after 11 of 12 years of looking for it, he started preaching in 1868, and then passed on the baton, the relay race. When 4 people run 100 meters, the relay race, and you're passing the baton. So 3 acharyas running the relay race of preaching. Bhaktivinoda Thakur passing it on to his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, passing it on to his illustrious disciple Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And in 1969, 101 year after Bhaktivinoda Thakur started preaching worldwide movement. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur started, Krishna consciousness was almost dead for 300 years. It was taken over by the deviant groups, Apasampradayas, people who posed as saints, but they would intoxicate and practice illicit sex. So much so that Krishna consciousness was considered the religion of immoral beggars. You know, sannyasis, and they don't make money, they beg, you give to them, and they smoke marijuana and have sex with married women. And do so much other nonsense. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur starts from that point, and 101 years later, Krishna consciousness is a worldwide movement on each and every continent. And then, 150 years after Bhaktivinoda Thakur started, 10 million ISKCON devotees worldwide. Plus other groups also started following the ISKCON success. And there are so many prophecies starting from the Vedas and ending up with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati stating how there would be devotees worldwide. And I was able to locate more than 50 prophecies. And everyone here is a part of those prophecies, and it has blessings of all of those acharyas and Lord's incarnations who made those prophecies. For example, in 1920s, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, very soon, 50 lakhs of devotees are coming who are going to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya worldwide. 50 lakhs, lakh is 100,000. 50 lakhs is 5 million. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati made a prophecy. Very soon, 5 million devotees are coming to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world. Welcome to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. More than 10 million people. And counting. So that's the... Srila Prabhupada started this worldwide fire. It's like a candle, one candle that is burning. You bring it into the room full of candles that are not burning. And this one candle can light all of the other candles without losing its light. So that's what Srila Prabhupada did. And then when he lit so many candles, these candles started lighting up all the other candles. Devotees sometimes think, I'm not advanced enough to preach. But that is incorrect, because no matter how little Krishna consciousness we may have, it is infinitely more than people who have nothing. And this little we can give them, they're going to be, wow. I have an example. I have a friend in Croatia, Achyutananda Prabhu, senior devotee. And he was in a bar with his friend before becoming a devotee. And this friend was not a devotee, but he read Srila Prabhupada's book and he was impressed. And they were in a bar and they were both drunk. And this guy who read Srila Prabhupada's book was telling him, I read this book, and, he was quoting from the book, he was preaching from the book. And Achyutananda Prabhu was, tell me more, tell me, where can I find more? And he gave him the book the next day, when they both got sober, and Achyutananda Prabhu became a devotee. But someone can say, but, how is this possible? Because Krishna consciousness is mystical, and this drunk guy had more Krishna consciousness than this other drunk guy, and he was able to give it to them. I remember one new bhaktin came in my hometown, and nobody knew how she came, because she didn't know a single devotee. But she met some devotees who fell down, and somehow or other, through common friends, they would meet at the seaside at night and drink and smoke marijuana. And then two devotees there who would smoke, they would start talking about Krishna. And she started hearing, it's like, tell me more, where can I find more? So after a few days of smoking and hearing about Krishna from the drugged out devotee, she asked, they sent her to the temple, and she became a devotee. So no matter how small the flame in our hearts, the flame of Krishna consciousness, we can light other lamps. And I mentioned this devotee from Switzerland, Harinamananda Prabhu, who held world book distribution record for 30 years. And how he joined. There was a devotee in congregation in Switzerland, young devotee, and he would go out here and there, distribute 1 or 2 books, and one day he met this boy who became Harinamananda Prabhu and gave him the book and gave him the temple address, and he read the book at night, and next day came and knocked at the temple door and became a devotee and distributed God knows how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of books. There are devotees in America, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, who never stopped distributing books. They've been distributing books for more than 50 years, and some of them distributed individually more than 1 or 2 million books. Can you believe it? If you enter the warehouse with 1 million books and you just to take one book, one by one, and count them, how much time it would take you. But they distributed what is it, Brigumuni Prabhu, I forgot his name. He's famous in America. And the books are just going. But, I cannot say best devotees. Some devotees just don't care about the numbers. They just care about sharing. Sharing is caring. And Kadambakana Maharaj gave a beautiful example, beautiful analogy. He says, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we all get a small cup, small glass for nectar. And this is so nice, so sweet. I've never tasted anything so sweet in my entire life. And it has meaning, it has depth. Wow, give me more. And how much can you put in a small cup? Really little. But when we start practicing Krishna consciousness seriously, and we practice it throughout the years, then this cup slowly grows. And it can contain more nectar. And practice of Krishna consciousness becomes more relishable. But that moment, we start pouring nectar from our cup to other people who never tasted that nectar. From that moment on, our cup starts growing faster. That's why people who start preaching, most of the time never stop. Once you get a taste for preaching, you can never stop, because sharing and seeing people drinking Krishna consciousness, that's incomparable. Incomparable. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one of his prophecies also mentions, because at that time the Army of Salvation, the Christian group, was quite active. Nowadays in America they are known as, second-hand shops. You can buy clothes cheaply there. But back then they were going in the streets chanting the Lord's names, whatever Christian songs. And he said, the things are changing around the world very soon something is going to happen. And it happened. It took more than half a century since he wrote that. It took like 80 years since he wrote that prophecy that Srila Prabhupada came. But it happened. So, if we are not the part of that prophecy of preaching already, let's become one. And then once we become, let's remain the part of that prophecy as much as we can, as much as we have the ability to be an active part of that prophecy. And if we cannot become the part of that prophecy for whichever reason, then we can assist the preaching mission by not interrupting it. We should not serve as a bad example, but at least we should not be in the way of devotees preaching. We should say, yeah! Like once one devotee approached his spiritual master and he asked him, how can I serve you? And his guru told him, go away. And he was not happy. He was not happy. And other devotee told him, why are you not happy? He told me to go away. He gave you service. You just go away and you're serving him all day long. You don't have to do anything. You just move away and you're serving your spiritual master. You're just not bothering him. So, in Kali Yuga is the age of conflict, age of quarrel, age of fighting. And sometimes we can see fights among the devotees and it disturbs the preaching mission. This shouldn't happen. Ego trippings. Everyone can preach, Someone can go on Harinam, someone can, oh, we like this style of Harinam, but we don't like that other style of Harinam. And there are devotees who do that other style of Harinam. Why not two Harinam groups, Why not, Why only down Chopova Street, on Tromostovje, Prešernov Square, Prešern Square? Why not to some other parts of Ljubljana? Why not to some, when you go to India, I haven't heard devotees going on Harinam in slums. Why not? They're human beings. We can have slum temple made, a shack, maybe not with the deities in there, but pictures of Krishna. Why not? And there's an open sewage next to it, but there's a temple. And 100,000 people in Mumbai or Kolkata or New Delhi slums become devotees and go down the streets. We don't care. Business person, rich person, influential person, beggar. We don't care. In Latvia, in 1990s, a homeless man in his 70s became a devotee. And within 1 year, he came to chant 32 rounds per day. He learned more verses than any brahmachari in the temple, and all day long he was doing service in Food for Life, distributing prasadam. After being homeless for 30 or 40 years, living in the cardboard box on a railway station. Someone could say, but these people, low class, uneducated, you don't know. They may be half crazy, but they can become amazing devotees. There was one devotee who joined during Srila Prabhupada's time, his disciple, Kushakrata Prabhu. He was weird. He would regularly go outside the temple and smoke. And devotees wanted to kick him out, and Srila Prabhupada said, no, keep him. So he normalized and got initiation, and he remained brahmachari his entire life, but he learned Sanskrit and Bengali, and he translated about 200 books from Sanskrit to English. He was weird, but he normalized. Now, if it gets more weird, then okay, let's try to, balance that out. But you never know. And someone is, a small devotee. Who can say small or big? Because some people in the history of Krishna consciousness were praised as great devotees, and it turned out they were not. And some people were criticized for being poor devotees or no devotees at all, and it proved that they were exalted devotees. You don't know. How do you know? There's this devotee always in the back of the temple, Once someone asked Radhanath Maharaj, how have you become such a big leader in ISKCON? And he said, I never tried to become one. I just tried to be in the back, but those that were pushing to be in front just kept disappearing. But if Krishna says, become big, well, you know what to do. We're about service. We're not about playing big, neither are we about playing small. We're about serving. So if Krishna wants us to be big or wants us to be small, it doesn't matter. We just want to serve and share this good fortune with others. Because once Srila Prabhupada, Matajis were complaining to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, you were teaching Yamuna Devi to cook and she doesn't want to teach us anything that you taught her. And Srila Prabhupada invited her, said, is it true that you're not teaching them? He said, if you don't share what you've gotten, you'll just become envious. So we can be big devotees, but if you don't preach, we just become envious because we're keeping Krishna for ourselves, and that's not the spirit of the preaching movement of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. Everyone should get Krishna consciousness so they know the meaning of life. So then, even if something happens and bad things happen in this material world, then you know the goal of life. I mean, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, was diagnosed cancer a couple of months ago, and it's serious. And my sister works in the oncological department, the cancer ward, so she knows how serious it is. She's disturbed, he's disturbed, you know. And I'm like, start chanting. Even if you cure yourself or if you die, you know, start something. You know, what if I die? What if I don't die? What if I live and I remain sick? You know, I told them, you know, come to Ljubljana, speak with Ananta. You know, he has a diet, cures everything. But they're suffering, and I'm not happy to see them suffer. So, okay, here's a book, here's prasadam. You know, he doesn't eat anything, so I offer some water to the Lord, and I got some healing waters, I don't know. So I offer that, you know, so he gets some prasadam. He anyway has a semi-transcendental name. The end is missing. His name is Goranga. But we should share at least something, at least here and there. It's going to be good for us too. Hare Krishna. Questions, comments, corrections, or critiques?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the lecture. So now that marathon is over, how can we, firstly ourselves, stay inspired to keep on preaching, distributing books, and consequently also inspire others to do the same?
By faking it. Somebody once asked Vishnujan Maharaj, a famous disciple of Srila Prabhupada, how are you so enthusiastic all the time? And he says, I'm not. I'm just faking it. But because enthusiasm is the nature of the soul, it catches on and it keeps on going. So I'm personally, well, both me personally and me as a Dalmatian, I'm lazy. Dalmatians are known as lazy, and I'm lazy. And if you would leave me alone, I would just sleep all day long. You know, I'm not highly motivated to do anything. But I would still do some things, and I would volunteer for some services, and authorities would ask me, can you do that service? And you know, my answer in my head is no. No. I did 2 hours of service, now I want to rest for the rest of the day. But despite my mind's desire not to do it, I would go and do it. And not much has changed within these several decades that I'm devotee. But I'm serving. I'm not looking for any deep feeling of motivation. So, the thing is, just keep on doing it. Okay, just do it, I don't have to be fired up. I can be. You can be, anyone can be. But not necessarily. There were devotees who were fired up, and they are still fired up now, 50 years later. There were devotees who were fired up, but now they're not devotees. There were devotees who were not fired up, and they are not fired up now, but they're still actively participating in the preaching movement. So for me, it's an intellectual effort based on Guru Sadhu Shastra, Shastra Chakshu, seeing with the eyes of the Shastra. That's good. That's good for the people. And then, going and understanding it's a marathon, not a 100 meters sprint with hurdles. No burnout. Let's balance it out. Let's all participate a little, and so we can continue for the rest of our lives, keeping our physical, mental, and spiritual health intact, resting when we need, sometimes surrendering extra, but after that, people who are professional sportsmen, they don't train every day. Some days they just rest. And that's, you push your muscles, and muscles, when you do exercise, they break. Micro, how to call them, micro fractures in the muscles. And then when you rest, the body, renovates that, builds new connections, and that's how the muscles grows, with bodybuilders and everyone. And same with learning. The worst thing that students do when they have tests is stay up all night long because tomorrow they have a test. Horrible. You study and you sleep, and you remember much more when the brain is rested, rather than studying, pulling an all-nighter. So balance, small steps, and maintaining it throughout the years, because you want to be preaching in 50 years from now, not be burnt out and it's like, whether you remain brahmachari or you get married, you want to remain a preacher. Not just, okay, now I have a family, now I need to get a job and stop preaching because I have to make money. But on the way to work, on the way back, you can always do something. Some people, when they go to work, they bring a book and they distribute a book on the way to work, a book on the way back. It's not much, but it's 60 books per month. It's more than 700 books per year. So balance it and don't strain yourself. And always take inspiration of others who already do that, who have this fire going. Hare Krishna. 9:07. Prasadam time, so I don't lose the mercy. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samavita Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo.